All right, so we are going to recording. Okay, so just a couple of things about protocols. We're going to, just before I call everything to order, we're going to record it. We'll post this later. We're not going live. Is that right, Lisa?
Yep, correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what I'd just ask people is just to keep their microphones on mute, just to avoid any background noises while Paul's going through the presentation. At that point, once we get through each section like we normally do, just a little bit different, what we'll do is recognized by the chair. Now, I may not be able to see everybody, but Paul's going to sort of help me through that because I'm on an iPad, so I'm not going to be able to get to see everybody that's at the meeting. And again, we'll just, respecting the fact that we've, keeping it on mute because we find that this works a little bit easier. All right, so we're going to start. So we'll just call the meeting to order. And Paul, it's you're the only one on the agenda, so you can start with COVID-19 update. I think is where you're going to start.
Well, I think first we were going to start. Just let me get this.
Did you? Okay, sorry.
All right, we're going to
checking in. All right. All right.
How is everyone? I hope you're all doing well. I know I haven't seen a lot of you in a while, especially not in the community center. So we just kind of want to make sure everyone's good. No one needs anything. No one needs any help. We're all here. We're all a team working together in the community. So just want to check in and make sure you're all good.
Good. Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to COVID-19 update. What is open and what can we do? So as of right now, all amenities are currently open except for playground equipment and outdoor exercise equipment. Now, this is under provincial restrictions still. That's why they still remain closed. The amenities that are open still require you to maintain social distancing and practice good health and safety protocols. You can hit and kick balls on the sports fields with your pod of socialization, but no team-on-tee play is allowed, especially where sports where close contact cannot be avoided. So that means like soccer, hockey, basketball, anything where you got to get nice and close to each other. It's not recommended. It is also recommended that you do not share equipment with those outside of your household. So even though they may be in your pod, if they're not in your household, they prefer you not to share equipment if you can. If you have to, try and make sure you wash your hands, sanitize after each use. So it's important that all of us with kids, that we maintain this with them. We really try and explain it to them. I know some have a hard time understanding, but I know they're getting used to it. That's for sure. Probably more used to it than some adults out here. So, so with that, we'll move on to return to sport. So 2 weeks ago, I was on a call with the Ontario Hockey Federation, and they've been working with the Ontario Recreational Facilities Association to develop guidelines for the return to hockey. A lot of this is going to be left for the municipality to dictate, and based upon best practices provided from public health, the Public Health Association of Canada, as well as provincial and county health. We're working with minor hockey to see what this might look like. As of right now, soccer and baseball have both canceled their seasons. Some suggested guidelines for return to sport will include reduced participants. So they could say instead of a full team, you have 5 kids on the bench versus another 5 kids, and one coach, and one official. Nothing's been set in stone yet, but these are some of the suggestions that are out there. They've also suggested no spectators, so that would limit the amount of people coming in the building. Mind you, that could be different for a building like ours where we have a lot of seats. But I think to be consistent, we're going to try and keep it constant around the county. So some buildings don't have seats. If they say that, just to be fair, because a lot of our teams play in the different places, we'd probably follow suit with that. So another suggestion is coming to the rink dressed only 15 minutes before your ice time. This is to reduce the amount of people in the building at one time and to allow us ample time to clean, and hopefully not reduce too many rental times, because if you have reduced people coming in, you have to take the time in between to clean. So that can mean there could be 15 minutes to half an hour between each time slot. As we know, there's always a fight for time slot, as there is. Some suggestions also require no access to the showers, reduced usage of change rooms. So say like a men's league, you can't sit in the dressing room for 30 minutes afterwards. you have to just basically get off the ice, take your skates off, and go home. There's also a potential for a late start to the season. I know there's been some different dates thrown out there. Some people are talking October, and then they may even just have practices until January, and then maybe in January start some team-on-team play. A lot of that's going to rely on the restrictions from the provincial government. Like if they don't allow team play in September, there's not going to be team play. So a lot of that's going to rely on that. Middlesex Center's done a good job because they left their ice pad in, so they're the only ice around here right now. So they're getting a lot of professionals that are allowed to train, wanting to train there. So they're setting up kind of a guideline on how hockey can operate. It's pretty intense. It's pretty extensive. So we're probably going to look at that and see what they're doing, and then we're going to bring that to minor hockey as a suggestion to keep consistency. So there would be increased cleaning, disinfecting between rentals. And then also there's also a possibility that there may be no travel to other arenas this year. So that could mean a season could look more like Lucan on Lucan. So it's just different Lucan teams playing different Lucan teams, which, might be fun for the kids. They might enjoy that more. Who knows? So that's kind of what we're looking at, what sports may look like in the upcoming season. It's still really out there because we also have to decide if those numbers affect how many people are in the building in total. So say if there's kids on the ice, maybe there's not kids in the main hall. So that can really affect our revenue. So it's a lot to digest. All this slideshow I'm going to send out to members afterwards as well, just so you have time to reread it if you need. With that, is there any questions or comments in regards to this? Nope. Okay, seeing none, moving on.
Sorry, Paul, I have one question about that. You said the outdoor equipment other than the playgrounds were open. Does that include the swimming pool? I haven't been to the community center in a while. I'm not sure. Is water in the pool?
No, we decided against opening the pool this season because there was a lot of restrictions put in place that being how our pool's set up would be very difficult to operate. And not only that, just the sheer expense versus revenue, it's quite significant that with the reduced bather capacity, I think they reduce your capacity by 75%. So if your pool normally held 100 people, you're down to 25. So
Yeah.
For the Lucan pool, that's a significant reduction. So
were there often more than 25 people in the pool?
No, but if our bather load, so on some days we had 90 bathers, right? So it can fluctuate, but I know a lot of people are saying like some pools are saying no more than 50 and they already take in well over 100 in their large pools. And then they also have 3 lifeguards on staff, plus 2 extra staff to monitor for social distancing, plus extra staff for cleaning, plus extra staff for looking after entrance and exit of the facility. So you're quadrupling your cost and you're vastly reducing your revenue. So it's, for the Lucan pool, I think it'd be very difficult. But we opened our splash pad to kind of offset this. I know it's the younger kids. It's not ideal for the older kids. At least it's something that we can provide we were able to do it without staffing. The health unit came out last week and they're quite happy with what we've put in place, especially our signage. Their biggest key is messaging. They want that to be the biggest thing out there, right? Because education, even the OPP from the beginning of this, they said education before enforcement. So that's what we're trying to keep that message going.
Is there any further questions for Paul?
Is the washroom at the splash pad open?
Yes, the washroom's open there. Anywhere where we encourage people to come to, we should provide a washroom because that way they can have access to hand washing if they haven't brought their own hand sanitizer.
And Market Street Park?
Well, we haven't, not yet, because we haven't been encouraging people to go there.
Okay.
We're going to be working on getting that open though, because coming up, we'll talk about that. We're talking about maybe some potential programming at the parks.
Okay.
Any further questions for Paul on COVID-19 update? You'll have to let me know if anybody has their hand up, Paul.
No. See, Mr. Hall's joining us now.
Okay. Welcome, Wayne.
He's just connecting to audio.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I have one.
Yes. Keith Salters has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So Paul, like with baseball, there is talks of like if everything kind of changes in August, like to bring back kids, but it all depends on the government if they elect more than 10 kids, right? So baseball, we are in the talks of hopefully getting something started later in like August or September, but that's still like up in the air. Like that's whole, like I still can't see it happening anytime soon, but I know that we're trying to get some teams back just to have some practice. But again, the ball diamonds are open, correct?
They're open, but not for team-on-team play.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got to make sure you're following the guidelines. So say you got that group of 10 that you're allowed to gather with. You can all go and you can hit a ball around and do what you want.
Yeah.
No sanctioned games or playing.
Yeah.
And then really, I think with minor ball, if you do that, the main thing was you're going to have to follow the guidelines that are put out there. So you're going to have to figure out how to do the separation of teams, how to do sanitizing. You're probably going to have to do record keeping for contact tracing as well.
Baseball Ontario's got it all. The only thing they've changed now with Baseball Ontario is now you can they want to separate it 2 teams. You can separate 10 and 10 on a diamond, which is still pretty tough, right? It all depends on the age of the kids. That's the only thing that they've come up something different. But there's only 2 teams that are playing still right now, is the Badgers and St. Thomas. Oh, everybody else is all canceled. Everybody all around us is canceled. So
yeah, and I think like the guidelines are really going to be the major thing. And like say if hockey does go, it's going to look the same as whatever they've proposed for baseball, I'm assuming. If you look at the PHAC website, they've got really good guidance for recreation for youth and like how to weigh the risks. So like being indoors is a higher risk. If they're going to spend more than 15 minutes together, higher risk. How close contact is the activity? Do they need to share equipment? All those sorts of things. So if any of you have any concerns or like within your organizations or you're kind of looking for guidance, I would highly suggest you go to their website.
yeah.
Okay. Any further questions for Paul on that item 2?
Mr. Haskett has his hand up.
Okay, Colin.
Just a comment, and I don't know, this might be a big can of worms to open, but if we know that big groups of spectators are very unlikely, I would wonder if there would be any opportunity to investigate the potential of providing some live streaming for on the ice surface that could potentially be like gated access where, you know, Luca Minor Hockey could essentially control a feed and allow parents with a password or something to watch the hockey games. Because if you don't want them in the building, they're still going to want to be part of it. And I guess that's rather than having them, you know, sneaking in the Zamboni boards, in the Zamboni doors, maybe that's something that could be an investigated minimal investment, but something that could go a long ways. And even juniors or anything else, it could be something that could be utilized.
Yeah, something similar to that was proposed in BC. And I think it's a great idea. I would propose it to minor hockey or the juniors because I know people not being able to watch is going to be something that's going to considerably affect them for either enrollment or say for the junior team. That's where you get a lot of your revenue from. So I'm sure there's services you can set up where people have to kind of pay to watch, pay to log in, pay to get a password. And maybe that'll help minor hockey and the juniors get through this if that's what hockey is going to look like this season. So, yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay. Any further questions for Paul on the second item?
Seeing none, moving on.
Community feedback.
So community feedback, we conducted a survey to reflect residents' comfort level and expectations for the summer season. We got great feedback from it, from the community, and staff is hoping to use this format to do more to increase public engagement, because I know that's something that's been lacking, and it's been really pushed for us to try and find a way around. I think CRAC should use this tool if we feel any additional input is needed from the public on programs and projects. If it feel that better public engagement can help us make a better recommendation to council. So I'd really like to make more use of these these tools. It also helps me have more information to provide to council, because you can get good info and a lot of statistics to represent what you're trying to convey. I also think that maybe it's about time that we should maybe do another Parks and Recreation survey, since the last one was done in 2015, and it could maybe update our Parks Master Plan, as it can help identify the key points that were, and identify the ones that are still important today, as well as maybe show how some have changed. For instance, maybe some of the things that were important back then, the community's kind of changed its focus now. Obviously, it doesn't mean if we've started committing effort towards something, we should just completely forget about that. But I think it really helps just keep us in perspective of the community we're trying to do the best for. Yeah, so anyways, I'd like to pose to the committee, how are residents feeling towards recreation? What have you heard in the town? What have you heard in the township? Are people happy? Are people comfortable? What are people really hoping for? I know I've heard, kids have got to do something. So I'd really like to hear anything that you've heard, and if you could pass that back to me.
Paul, I just wanted to ask just a quick question. Did that survey, how many people answered the survey?
I believe it's 248.
All right.
I think ideally, and I think that's because it was a quick survey, because we were trying to get some quick feedback before making an important decision. Obviously, I think we should put it out with more time and try and put it out maybe more ways that we can. Maybe even you put, for those of the people that don't go on Facebook or don't go on our website daily, maybe we could put on Lisa's newsletter, we could attach a link that people could at least, they could type in on their computer, just make them more aware of people who wouldn't know where the survey is, kind of how to get to it. And then we could get a more accurate view from the municipality.
Right. No, thank you very much. Any other questions for Paul? Or comments, actually? You're looking for some comments, I think, Paul?
Yeah, just kind of, what have you heard? What have you heard in the municipality? What are people looking forward to doing? What are people hoping that we're going to do? How is their comfort level with what we have or what we don't have open yet?
Sorry, if I just start, with the splash pad they've opened up at Elm Street, I know that that's been very popular. So a lot of people are very thankful that we got that open. It's being used quite a bit. I think what we mentioned at council the last time about what the expectations were of people was that they really weren't expecting a whole lot, knowing that sort of what we were going through. But as we started to opening up things a little bit more, and again, example, the splash pad, that met with a great deal of a lot of applause. So, and it's being used quite a bit. So good move. Okay. Anyone else? Sorry.
Yeah, I just share the same thing that Daniel just said, and reconfirm what you were saying too, Paul. Is from what I understand, everybody is itching to get out. Everybody wants to go out. Everybody wants to be active, and at the same time, everybody understands that now is not the time that they can do that. So I think when it's safe to move forward, I think everybody wants that to happen immediately, but I don't think anybody wants that to happen until it's safe.
Yeah, and to echo on that, everyone needs to understand too, like when the province makes these announcements, we're hearing about them the same time you are. So they always add on to with their releases that municipalities should open when they feel they are ready. So you may hear tomorrow that, hey, hockey arenas can open, but that doesn't mean we may be ready to yet. We need to put in place guidance and guidelines of how we're going to operate. Or sometimes it could even require like putting up partitions or things that just haven't been thought of yet. And we're trying to react as quickly as we can as the province lifts their orders. So sometimes it's not as easy as that. But yeah, no, and it's surprising, in Lucan, we haven't had any issues. Once the splash pad opened up, they asked us to monitor it fairly closely for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And we haven't seen any gatherings. We haven't seen any issues. At most, we've seen a couple families have ripped down the snow fence because they said they didn't care. They wanted their kids to go on the play structure. And it's unfortunate when they do that, because that's the kind of stuff that's going to, like, if it happened all the time, it's like, okay, well, you can't play by the rules. Now the splash pad has to be closed. And we don't want to ruin it for everyone. So I really hope that people aren't going to continue doing stuff like that. But, you know, the skate park's never been overcrowded. I've probably seen more people playing tennis than I have in the last 5 years. And even the track's getting used regularly. It is like 100%, like all day long, there's people on that track, and it's getting good use. So it's good to see some of these things getting used again that had been kind of forgotten about. I know I've seen more families around town, like going around with their kids, biking, walking. It's actually kind of nice to see more families like kind of doing things together because we have time now. So it's kind of a nice, refreshing change.
Any other comments for Paul? With Keith?
Just up on same thing as Paul for Granton here. A lot of the kids and just be using the track more. Playground, no one's really been on it. I haven't really paid attention to that, but it's just too bad the kids don't have a splash pad in Granton, I guess. But the main part is a lot of people are getting out. The tennis court is also being used more too, that I've noticed too. So
yeah.
The main one is the track. There's a lot of people on that track, and so it's good. Only people are getting out, just gotta wait, right? Just gotta wait.
Yep.
Doesn't help that it's nice weather now.
Yeah.
Anything
well
further for? Sorry.
Moving on.
Okay, we're going to move on to social distancing program. Next item.
All right, so social distance programs. So we're looking at, you know, Abby and myself have been scratching our heads about how we can return to activities in a responsible way. We've been brainstorming on ways that we can still offer some of our regular programming, such as the seniors exercise.
Sorry, Paul, to interrupt. Is there a slide for that? It's not showing. I'm not getting it.
Forgot to share my screen.
Okay.
This is my first host
Yes.
hosting responsibilities. I apologize. You see that now?
Perfect. Thank you. I've got it. Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're trying to return to some of the programs that we normally offer, like our seniors exercise, and we're looking at ways that we can do them safely. Obviously, restrictions are going to have to decide how we operate them and what guidelines can be done with the resources we have available. Because we obviously, as we don't have revenue coming in as readily as we did before, we don't want to start incurring additional expense. We've been looking at the guidance from the PHAC listed to reduce risks, such as outdoor programming. As I said before, indoor over more than 15 minutes, and if they have to be in close contact, are the big three that they want you to look at, especially high risk, right? So they don't want seniors, children, people that really, they're really focusing on guidelines for them. So all our program would require a clear cancellation and refund policy to ensure participants are encouraged to stay home if they feel unwell or have met any of the COVID-19 assessment guidelines, such as being in close contact with someone who may have been infected. Tracking information would be required to be recorded for each session, as well as an assessment before each participation. So now that school's over, kids are going to need something to do, as I've heard over and over again. And how can we help with guidelines in place? So children, as I put here, can be the most unpredictable and difficult to control, as those of us with small children all know. I know some adults that are just as bad. But to ensure their health and safety and the safety of participants, any programs involving younger children may have to involve guardians, because it can be difficult for instructors to enforce and educate social distancing procedures. So this could be a parent and taught program, or maybe like a family craft in the park. We're looking for any ideas that you guys might have had or any thoughts. For seniors exercise, we can easily space them out. We could potentially run it under a pavilion spaced out so they're not in the heat. With craft activities, we'd have to give a list to the parents beforehand so everyone brings it together, and we could maybe separate parents out on the grass or in the pavilion and do those kind of things. I know, Abby, I don't know if you want to speak on this at all, but some of your thoughts or ideas.
Yeah, so pretty much everything that Paul said, like the seniors exercise group will be easier to maintain than the kids, obviously. Some of the kids programming that we came up with would just be mom and taught sports, but in a circle drawn out on the grass area. So that's kind of the best way that we've come up to keep the kids and the parents socially distanced, is give them like a 10-foot circle that they can play around in. Same thing with the crafts, like they can do them in the grass, they can do that as well. Even a couple ideas came up with the librarian Lee. Maybe she would be interested in doing like story times or maybe even sing-alongs. We have a ukulele instructor. She would be willing to lead like a couple musical lessons if the kids can bring their own homemade instruments and stuff. So it's kind of all up in the air, but as long as we can provide it in a safe way, so the kids have something to do around town.
Our biggest hurdle that both Abby and myself has found is that there's been lots of conferences and calls about what you could do with programming. Virtual programming has been pushed over and over again. And the conversation we keep having is I don't see people in Lucan Biddulph wanting to subscribe to virtual programming. I know we've all had our kids on the tablets, on the computers for the last couple of months doing schoolwork every single day. And we're kind of trying to think of ways to get them out of the house, get them active again. So I think we're trying not to focus on that as much because we don't really see that there's going to be a buy-in in Lucan Biddulph for that. I mean, maybe that we do a survey of that kind of stuff and see what kind of people's interests are. But I just don't see that being a big thing in Lucan Biddulph. I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong if we could provide it for them. So I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on this.
Any thoughts for Paul, please?
I seem to have lots of thoughts today. Just I guess, reaffirming what everything about you're saying, Paul, about getting them off the videos, right? And what's something else that you said earlier too, Paul, is the fact that we have a lot more time to spend with our kids. So I would think that within the community, any type of family organized activities would be welcomed. So things like, like scavenger hunts, or if you have different spots set up at different parks, or getting people out, active, moving, walking, going from station to station, and understanding that we do have the social distancing rules in place, but something along those lines, I think, would be a thought that you might want to consider.
Thank you.
I like the scavenger hunt idea. We just have to be careful that whatever we do, it doesn't somehow turn into a gathering. So I think that'll just be Abby and mine difficulty to figure out, but we'll work hard to come up with a plan, because I think that's a great idea, especially if it gets them out to the parks, and maybe we can involve the museum or someone gets some history around town. Maybe it helps educate the kids about where they live. Daniel, Colin Haskett has a comment.
Colin?
Yeah, spot on, Todd. I think that's a great idea. And I guess my 2 cents would be to, to start slow. Certainly you don't need a week-long activities, but just try one thing at a time and have it limited in numbers. And I would certainly encourage you, right now, there's not a business or a government organization that is trying to make return on anything that they're doing. So if you can do something at a loss, I would encourage you to do it, because I feel that the mental health of our communities is really taking a bit of a beating here in the last number of months. And if you can get anybody outside excited about doing something, I don't care what it costs, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Colin. Is there anyone else that had any thoughts or ideas? I had one, if I could. A resident asked about during the summer, having a big movie screen drive-in kind of thing at the arena. Something like that is just, because getting people out, and we can still be in families, we can still be isolated. But again, I agree with Colin about the mental health and just getting people out to do things, I think is very, very important. And I think that's, again, looking for ideas, and we can pass those on to Paul and to Abby. Is there any others? Anyone else have any ideas or thoughts on this?
Yes, Mrs. Barr.
Yeah, I like your idea of getting people out, kind of the scavenger hunt idea. It's something I've done with my grandkids over the years, created like a pathway walk that had them having to go out and find out answers about different things. Where is this? What's at this location? A pathway around the park, so that that way, if you did it, you could send people out in a timed spacing to move around town and find out the answers, and learn about the history and so on in the process, or learn about what's where in Lucan at the same time. The kids loved it. Of course, if you sort of end up towards the ice cream store, that's always a positive. But yeah, we've done that successfully both at the cottage and in Lucan with grandkids. But as far as the seniors go, I know we're just as frustrated as everybody, but I can't imagine having my kids being little at this point. Cautious unless they were really sure that things were safe. You'd have to really stress the safety aspects of coming to an exercise thing. I think there's people who would like to come out and do something, get out of the house, but safety would be the big thing for them.
Thank you. Anything further for Paul on this item?
Moving on.
Moving on. Okay, phase 2 update.
So, funding and new ways to operate. Last week, we were contacted by the Director of Intergovernmental Policy and Program, the delivery branch of the Ministry of Infrastructure, to confirm if our municipality is still able to commit to our portion of the project. We believe this is due to COVID-19 changing the landscape for many economically, and that they are confirming which applications are still able to proceed. Kind of another way for them to easily eliminate projects off their easily subscribed to funding. Hopefully this is a sign that they will be finalizing the provincial round of decision making, and they were sure to mention that their email did not constitute an approval of the project, but they had said before they were still on track for late spring. I know it's summer now, so hopefully that means we're getting an answer soon about whether we've gone past the provincial selection process. There's a fear that the funding is being used to offset COVID-19. I've heard this out there. I really think that the funding has been committed to the fund and most likely will not be affected, because what better way to boost the economy than start a whole bunch of infrastructure projects across Canada. It's good job creation, and it's just good economically. So I really don't think that the COVID-19 money is pulling away from that. No one can guarantee or solidify an answer for that, but that's my thoughts, especially the conversations I've had with our representative. So dealing with that as well. So I've gone to a representative and I've asked her if COVID-19 completely changes how recreation looks and how we operate. Are we then able to go back to our plans even though we were approved if we get selected? And she said there's absolutely always opportunity through each step of this project, that it can always be reviewed. For instance, if they come back and recreation says, you shouldn't have big shared washrooms anymore, any new building should maybe now have single family service washrooms, then we should be changing that on our plan now if we get funding, so you completely revamp the washroom. So I think that's a positive thing, that if sports change completely from now on, that we can kind of address that on our plans.
All right. I think Ron, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just if I could just pop in at this point, just had a couple of comments on this. It is, hindsight is always great, but it's too bad we didn't get approval when we thought we could get approval, which would have been the end of January. Because looking back, this would have been the perfect time. There's nobody in the facility. It would have been nice if we could have awarded the project and all the work could have been going on right now when there's absolutely nobody in the facility. That would have been brilliant. But of course, that's just not to be. But to Paul's point there, we did have a question from one of the ministry people asking whether Luke and Badolf was still able to keep up their end of the funding. And I believe, I think Paul mentioned this, but I think the intent of the question is some municipalities, most, I would suggest most with the transit system are in a vastly different financial position than what Luke and Badolf is. And because we don't have a transit system and we're not losing money hand over fist with regards to the transit, we are still fairly steady as far as income and expenses go. So we are still in the game, and I suspect we may be in a better position because some of these other municipalities that do have transit systems may not be able to continue on with their proposed project. So, the silver lining, I guess, in this whole COVID thing is we may end up to be moving up the ladder as far as priority goes, because we can still do it, whereas maybe some of these larger municipalities cannot. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks, Paul.
Questions, comments for Paul or Ron? Anything for? I just had a question. Was there any time frame? I don't know if you mentioned any time frame on when we might hear about this, or I know it's way overdue, but considering what's going on. But
the last time frame was late spring, so now we're in summer.
Right. Okay.
They haven't been able to guarantee everything, and obviously everyone's very busy. We've been extremely busy. The provincial government's been extremely busy. The federal government's been extremely busy. So I'm sure they don't have as much time to vet all these applications.
Yeah, the fact that we did get that question, and that question came to me probably about 2 weeks ago now. I do, fingers crossed, of course. I do think we're getting to the end of the rope here. I think they are going to make a decision fairly soon. I think if they're going to do something, they should do it fairly quick. We're in need of good news. So I think from the provincial standpoint anyway, and the federal standpoint, I think they want to give some good news. So I think they're working towards that. And like I said, hopefully when I get back from holidays in 2 weeks, we might have some good news, I hope.
Okay. Anything further on phase 2 for Paul? Questions, comments from anybody in the group? We're good. Right, I think we're good to move forward on to soccer fields.
All right, this will be the big one. So soccer fields, where are we sitting with the field projects, and how did we get here? So a little background: since PRAC was last in session, there was much discussion in regards to soccer fields. It was expressed to council that although PRAC would like for staff to work with the Soccer Association to develop a cost-effective plan, they would not be in support of a plan that was a significant cost to the township. Staff had several meetings with the Soccer Association regarding other field use and discussion of reconfiguration of the fields behind the arena. It was identified that the nearby fields would not be sufficient enough to accommodate soccer's needs, and that reconfiguration of the field behind the arena may be the only solution to the short-term concerns. The initial estimate, after soccer had met with, and staff had met with experienced contractors to determine what the scope and price might be, came in at around $150,000. It was a ballpark number that was put out for this project, and several times we were reminded by the contractors that they would need topographic maps and engineering to complete and determine a more accurate estimate. The township's capital budget of $120,000 has been earmarked for soccer field improvements. $20,000 of that represents soccer's contribution to the project. This was originally earmarked for Field 2 improvements. In 2020, council committed to putting another $100,000 in reserves in the 2020 budget. This would cover the project estimate and be within the municipality's capabilities. Dillon's was contacted to determine the actual scope of the cost of the project, and was recommended to council to recommended that Dillon's be hired for consulting to conduct topographic surveys to determine the scope of the project and a cost estimate. The Scope of the work was determined based on soccer's needs for field size, drainage to the fields, and the construction was used using municipal level quality of fields to keep the cost at a minimum, as well as leaving portions of the track untouched that are not required to be removed to accommodate the fields. This is also to reduce costs. That being said, due to the grading constraints in the area proposed and the upsizing of drainage to accommodate the extra load to prevent blowouts, the cost came back significantly higher than the original estimated, with a total project cost of $519,900 before HST. Now, it is to be noted as well, $50,000 of that is put aside for incidentals, so the things that you don't expect, which if anyone's done any construction, there's always incidentals. Additionally, it was reflected in the breakdown, the cost of sod versus hydroseed. An additional cost was reflected to show that sod that would result in a better potential play field sooner. And that price alone was $196,000, as opposed to what was reflected in the budget, which is $98,000 for hydroseed. I would recommend that if council were to decide to proceed with this project and seeding would be the desired method, that soccer should come up with a plan B with staff for field usage following the season, in the following season, should it not be adequately developed. So if we get the soccer season and we decide, hey, there's no grass yet, and if you go out there, you're just gonna ruin all the work. So we would have to work with the soccer association to have a plan B already set up for them to have either fields elsewhere in another municipality. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. That'd be for me to meet with soccer and figure out. It's also important to note that with COVID-19, there's been significant slowdown in many projects throughout the province. Staff would like to set up a meeting with the developers of the top soccer field to see if there's potential for usage in the spring should their project not be ready. This could buy the township more time to facilitate work or approach a new plan for soccer field development. So as we all know, like, a lot of projects have started, but they're not really picking up with steam in some places. So there's always potential, and I think we should at least approach the developers as to see if we could have access to that field. I know we had done up a field agreement with them this year to have usage, so I'm sure it'd look like the same thing, and it really depends on them and what their schedule looks like. But I think it's at least an option to look at. This information is going to be presented at the next council meeting, and we just kind of wanted to put it out to you for any additional comments before it's provided to council. And with that, also, I'd like to give you a full breakdown of this is what the cost actually has been broken down as. Now, earlier today, Jeff Little and myself had met to kind of see, as a township with the equipment we have, is there a way that we can cut costs? I know we could maybe cut it a 10% savings. It's not a significant amount. The project's still quite a bit over what the municipality's capabilities are. But that will be reflected in the report to council as well as when it comes to seed. What's proposed there, even for the hydro seed, is a very good mix of seed. There are cheaper options. 350 is a larger, good, like a better quality seed. I know for some ditches they do 1.5, but keep in mind it's a soccer field. If we're gonna do it and we're gonna invest money, we should probably do it right. So we gotta really keep in mind, if cutting corners, where we would do it, because there's certain aspects, for instance, grading. I know subgrade, we could maybe do some of the work. We could maybe ship in some of the dirt, but when it comes to final grade and drainage, that should be left to a professional, or you're gonna get, I know I've heard it over and over again we've met with contractors, you're gonna get a field that's been done by pavement layers. Like, they're not ideal, because then you end up having, in the long run, paying more money because you have to get the good guys to come back in and fix it. So I think that's to be kept in mind if we're going to approach that as well. What you see here, this is the topographic grading map. There's a significant amount of grading that needs to be done if this project were to go forward. Everything that's seen in blue is stuff that needs to come up, and everything that's red and yellow is stuff that needs to come down. So that being said, some of the stuff that comes down can go into where it needs to come up, but it's not enough to balance out the full scope of work. So that's where some of the importing of material would be. The importing material, I spoke with Dylan's this morning, it ranges about $30,000 of that grading cost. If we were to do it ourselves, Jeff and I factored out the timing, about how long it would take. Our dump trucks are smaller than what you would use if you were actually doing this job. Fuel costs, labor costs, and it still cost us about $15,000 probably to do it ourselves. So there's not a significant saving there. But it's all factors that will be reflected when it's presented to council for transparency, and just so all the things are put out there.
Okay.
So with that, roundtable discussion.
If I could maybe say one thing just to clarify, we did have an agreement drafted for the use of the the large size soccer field beneath the water tower. We did have an agreement set out for that. We didn't actually, bring that to council because the soccer season was canceled, so we didn't need it. So it's there in draft form, but it never did get signed. But to Paul's point, we should go back to that contractor or that developer and see if their development plans are still on track for next year, because for all we know, we may be able to get another year out of that upper field. And and I know there's some assumptions that we're going to be playing soccer next year or baseball or whatever. We don't know that yet at this point. So there's a lot of question marks still hanging out there. So, but yeah, it was a shock. Like I just about fell off my chair, almost dropped my drink when I saw that price from Dylan's. Good Lord, that was whoa. But I think it's and I don't want to sound harsh on the people who gave the original estimates, because really they didn't have the advantage of getting out there with the laser level and figuring out exactly what was what. So until you actually do it, it is a very ballpark number. Now that ballpark number of 150 obviously was about out by a factor of almost 2, but it happens, and that's why we go through this process, because we can't start doing something like that without knowing a better estimate before council. So
questions, comments, Colin?
Just before I make any comments, I'd just like to make a correction, and that was back at the beginning of when you started talking about that, Paul. I think you had said that the PRAC committee had given direction to council that we had given direction to staff to meet with Soccer Association as long as it didn't cost very much money. And I don't believe that was the premise of the conversation. I think that we weren't necessarily in favor of a knee-jerk solution, and we wanted all long-term solutions to be addressed as well.
Okay. You said you have another comment, Colin, or a question?
I generally talk enough. I'll let others do the speaking for a bit first.
Well, your mic's open. You might as well go ahead.
Question, I guess. Do you, by chance, have any idea how much Dylan was paid to prepare their estimate?
The consultant fee is standard consultant fee. It's around $10,000 for the total thing. If the project were to go forward, we would suggest that they would also do project management, which would incur another $7,000.
So I guess just to follow up with a comment, I guess my only comment is with a world that is completely turned upside down, I don't see the significant benefits of shoving more things onto one particular piece of property, squeezing it in and bringing people closer together in a space that's already pretty well tapped. But, I have lots of other comments, but again, this is a committee and I generally talk lots, and I'd rather hear from other people. I can stay quiet for a bit.
All right. Any other comments then, or questions for Paul?
I might be picking up the torch that Colin just handed to me. That location, the site map, was that for that was for behind the community center?
Yes, correct.
And so if I remember correctly, that impacted the running track, did it not?
Yeah, the running track on that map would, let me bring it back up for everyone. So can everyone see my mouse when I do this?
Yep.
Okay, so the running track originally follows through this area.
Mm-hmm.
So in the conversations I had with Dylan's and the soccer association, I had mentioned, you know, the usage of the track, it's grown exponentially since 2015 when the survey said, you know, rip the track out, it doesn't get used anymore, it's defunct. It gets used all day now. So I said, if we do anything to the track, it has to at least remain a circuit. So the proposal would be to come in behind this row of red maples and join back up. And that would be done using material that was pulled out of this area. So the main thing is it would have to remain a circuit. Yes, it doesn't get used for horses anymore, so it doesn't have to be that size, but it should still remain a circuit because a lot of people come and they do laps.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's we've had ladies that were training for a marathon came and they needed to know how long it was so they could do their training properly. So you need to be able to have that. And I think we should never take away an amenity that gets used to provide another amenity if we can help it. I think would be ideal. I know
But the
sometimes it's not possible, but.
Sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to. Sorry, were you done, Paul?
Yeah, no.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry. If I remember correctly, at the last meeting, we're not talking about a secondary site. I can't remember where it was. Someplace near a sewage disposal area. We were comparing it to Ilderton.
At one point, there had been a thought put out there for putting fields by the lagoon area that can't be developed. The concern soccer had with this was that it would be further down the road and they were immediately losing a field. Because that would be tied up in a development agreement as it's part of development. So.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll shut up and let somebody else take the torch from me. But I think that from if I were to give any input, I would point out the fact that Lucan is a growing community. It's a growing family community, and there's going to be more and more need for recreation. And I think that what we're doing here is solving an immediate need and is not looking at a long-term solution. And that's a lot of money to be throwing at an immediate need.
Great. Thank you. Anything further? Any other questions or comments?
Councillor Masterakis has a comment.
Councillor?
Yes, good evening. Yeah, for me, the numbers are the numbers, right? It's and as Ron was talking about earlier in regards to if our opportunities are increasing potentially, and if infrastructure is going to be the direction that of funding for municipal government, then the arena project, if we know something in the shorter term, maybe an opportunity where we can look at that longer vision. And that's just my current thoughts, but I think for me, the numbers are the numbers. Those are big numbers. It's really, we were looking for a short-term fix initially, but that's a large number. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Comments? Questions? Further discussion? Yes, Linda? Yes.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay.
You're good. Yeah, I can hear you.
The hard part is that there has to be something done in a timely sort of way, given our untimely times. So developing what's right there at the arena area makes sense to me, given that we'll probably have to have more fields elsewhere later on as well. You know, as the population is growing, we're going to have even more. So developing the land that we have, I can't see developing the lagoon area. That, to me, that would take a heck of a lot of work to make that function. Whereas the grounds, yes, they need leveling and rearranging, but to me, it makes the most sense to try and do the work right there. The price, yeah, going more than 3 times over the original plan is tough to swallow. But yeah, it depends on how fast, if you want fast term, or this seems like a bit bigger term fix than short term. So it's going to cost more. There's no doubt about it. It is appalling though, all the stuff that has to be done in preparation, that how much that costs, the consulting and all that kind of stuff. Certainly we found that with our renovation, but it takes away right in the beginning. But yeah, soccer is such a it's such a good sport for kids to be able to do. So many kids can do soccer, and I see it as a big one that needs to be supported. Just my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone, anything further? Any comments, questions? We could go back to Mr. Haskett.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm obviously been a little bit more vocal on this, and my rationale is really quite simple, and it's not what most people would think. It has nothing to do with the fact that I share property with the Lucan Community Center and I may have a soccer field running beside me. If we do, that's fantastic. We knew that when we moved here. To me, this again seems like a quick solution, and now when I see the price tag, it seems like a very expensive, quick solution. It's going to handicap any potential growth of baseball diamonds in the same area where we already have our 2 baseball diamonds. It's going to potentially put some pressure on the parking concerns that we already have at the community center. And for me, I am sorry to the soccer parents and I am sorry to the soccer association, but I do not feel that this is a decision that needs to get made until the community. I feel like that is our priority. Walk into something that's going to cost $500,000 would leave me feeling a little uneasy with the citizens that I'm supposed to represent on this particular.
Thank you. Further comments? Anyone?
I just have one, if I may.
Yep.
I think,
and then, yep.
You know, Colin's exactly right. The price tag on this, you know, if it was going to be a quick and easy fix at the lower price tag, and they said that this would suffice them for 7 to 10 years, I think they said to us at council. That was one thing. But with the price tag being what it is now, that's, you know, I think that's almost a foregone conclusion what council is going to decide there, because we don't have the money there for that project right now. So there's no way. And really, to Colin's other point, to spend that kind of money on what would be a temporary fix just does not seem like a good use of money. So I think, in the absence of spending the money on what Lucan Minor Soccer wants for their temporary short to, you know, and when I say short, I mean 5 to 10 year fix, something else has to be done. So we can't just say no and just turn our back and walk away. I think there has to be some work that we need to do, whether we need to make arrangements with, you know, Bryant to use the Bryanston field or whatever. But I think there has to be a long-term plan coming out of this, but it's not going to be for a couple of years. So we need to find an interim solution that's going to not be perfect. It will not be perfect, but it will be better, I guess, for the taxpayers. And to quote my old friend Harry Rafe, he doesn't mind spending money if you spend it wisely and do it correctly the first time. You don't want to spend the same money twice or three times over. So I think, this doesn't look like it's going to be a feasible project. It just doesn't look like a good use of money. So in the absence of that, I think we need to do something for soccer, to Linda's point. But we have to sit down with them and figure out what that is.
Sorry, Keith, did you have your hand up? And then Jenny?
Okay, I'm going to try and unmute.
Keith? There you go, Keith.
Okay, yeah, I feel it's pretty pricey, but numbers are numbers. But what were the thoughts still on the Granton? Like, first of all, those 3 fields, is that for youth soccer fields or the adult soccer fields? What was the proposal for them to put those 3 in? Was that like 1 adult and 2 youths, or?
So having 3 full size would give them
What it was?
The 3 full size fields would give them the ability to do better scheduling with the older kids, as well as they can play crosswides over all 3 fields. So that would they could potentially have 6 games going on at one time. Obviously, parking might be a nightmare then, but I think it would give them more flexibility for scheduling. When it comes to Granton and some of the other fields that we visited, I know we visited one in LC Craig at the Lions Park there. It's vastly underutilized when I was speaking with Brandon Drew in North Middlesex. And it's not quite big enough. The biggest issue they had is the corner kicks. They wouldn't be able to properly do what they need to do to be in their leagues, I believe, is how they put it. Because the older children is the big problem. We all know on Saturday morning, you can fit the kids there because you just pop the tents up anywhere, right? Like you could put them in Elm Street or Market Street Park. They're not the issue. It's the nighttime when it's the issue. Same with the ball diamonds, right? They all want to be on that perfect time.
Well, then with that price tag of the grading and everything else, so how much does the soccer association get back to the municipality, back to us? Like when Ron said it was like a 7 to 10 year fix. So out of that, how much? I don't know how it works. I'm just asking. So if soccer gives you, do they give you guys so much money, or how does that work? Like how this 400,000, is that just municipality stuff or what?
So in the original capital agreement, they were to put in $20,000. It's what they've put aside for field development. Mind you, part of that, they have commented that they may need to buy new nets, especially if they're going to do these full-size fields. They need movable nets that they can push on and off the fields. A lot of that can get eaten up that way pretty quick. As you know, Keith, with equipment. I think that'd be a conversation we'd have to have, what kind of contribution they might be able to do. Keep in mind, soccer, much like baseball this year, it didn't happen. So you have to refund all your parents. A lot of them have switched to online registrations, and there's a fee for that and a fee for doing refunds. So if they took a big loss this year, they might not have those extra funds in their association. I can't speak on that. I'm not a member of their boards or all that, but it could significantly impact their capabilities. I know there's always opportunities for sponsorship from businesses or service groups, but once again, everyone's really stretched for money right now. Like everyone's being as charitable as they can right now. They may not have those extra dollars to go and keep giving without money coming in. I know like a lot of our groups, their big main fundraising events this year have not been able to happen. So that's a big thing. Like even like Bacon Fest not being able to happen, like that's good money for a lot of local businesses or like the Legion or the Lions. Like everyone brings in some good money those days, and if they don't have the money coming in, they don't have the money to give. So I think that's a factor to think about too. Soccer brings in about $3,000 for rental, and that's just minor. So accumulate that over a 7 to 10 year period. It's not at the 400,000, but I mean, same with hockey. Recreation has never been a moneymaker. It's not designed for that. It's there to be a service for people. So I think it's just, you have to think of to what level are we able to provide them a service? Like, what's the municipality's capability is the most important thing. So I think that's what needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I agree with like, it would be nice to move forward with soccer and help them out. That price tag's just wow. But it is what it is, I guess.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything further, Keith, or are we okay?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, Jenny was next. Can we hang on? Okay, there you go.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I just don't, sometimes my headset didn't work. Paul kind of actually already answered the question that I was going to ask was, what does soccer, I know taking it from a hockey stance, hockey comes to Paul at the end of each summer, has our contract, we contract hourly for ice, and obviously what we contribute hockey-wise to what soccer contributes, because I do remember with the meeting, hockey and soccer was constantly compared when soccer came to the PRAC meeting, and it was a little unfair because hockey provides a lot of use for the ice. I think with the price tag that is with the soccer field, and with soccer only contributing, Paul, you said about $3,000 a season, that doesn't balance out in just right now.
I mean, in fairness to soccer as well, though, like the bill for running the building with hockey,
Mm-hmm.
it's about $170,000 a year. So it's not, like I said, none of these
and
things.
That's what we pay.
Yeah. None of these things are money makers. We don't really come out with extra money usually. There's often a levy transfer with recreation because recreation's not designed to make money. If it was, it wouldn't be affordable for residents, and then they can't participate. And I think that's one of the nice things about soccer is that it's one of the more affordable sports. So for the residents in the community that can't afford it to play hockey or baseball,
I think at a $500,000 price tag to redo fields, it's not overly affordable.
Okay,
I'm just worried if you do all this work and then all of a sudden, like, are they going to put up fences so that it prevents people from going out there when it's raining too much? Like, because that's when the fields get wrecked. Like, you're going to do all this work to make these fields more pristine for recreational soccer. But how are they going to maintain it? Because it's open field. Anyone can go and walk on it. Anyone can take their dog on it and poop all over it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are just my concerns.
I mean, we're a very different landscape in Canada than it is in the United States. I know that's come up in many of my courses is that, in the United States, you don't go on a sports field unless you're playing a game.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, and like for instance, like the ice, we're resurfacing it, maintaining it constantly. I mean, the fields, if you did put fence up though, that's going to be more cost because that's a huge area. So, I mean, I'm sure at some point they probably have to do something to prevent balls going into the other fields as they're really close together.
Yeah, that was just my concern. So,
thank you. Colin has a question or comment.
Yeah, just sort of a final comment, and I will start off by saying how grateful I am to live in Canada, where we can walk across our soccer fields and do as we see fit. But you know what? We are so incredibly fortunate in the fact that the folks that have come from the Soccer Association, they're good heads. They're going to understand that this doesn't make sense either. And they have a strong desire to solve this solution. So I guess if I could just sort of wrap this up on my take, it would be to, use all of the tools at your disposal to solve their short-term solutions. Maybe they can practice on the ice surface without the ice. Maybe they can use the gymnasium at reduced rates because we understand that we're going through some growing pains, and continue to consult with them to find other options that might be a solution going forward that they'll be proud of. Because I think that's what we all want at the end of the day, is to have phenomenal soccer fields for our kids to play on and have a nice arena for our children to use. And, if we have more growth in apartment buildings, that these people are going to to enjoy our facilities, and not that they were just done some half measure just because someone was asking us to. So I guess my thoughts are, thank you to the soccer associations for pushing so hard to try to get somewhere. And I just hope that they understand that from sitting in this chair, it seems like it's a no-brainer to sit this one out for just a little while longer while we try to come up with a better solution.
Thank you, Colin. Any other questions, comments, concerns, things you want to bring up for Paul? Or Paul, do you have anything else? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, just one comment. Paul earlier mentioned there might be a redo of the Parks and Rec Master Plan, which is 5 years old. I'm not sure how the demographics has changed in 5 years. So if that is done, that may put a different spin on hockey, soccer, or other sports, or seniors complexes and everything else. So this may change. I know we're looking for funding potentially, hopefully sooner on infrastructure, and that would drive it. But a redo of the plan may change the balance between where things are going, hockey or soccer, and who's coming to communities. So that'll be interesting to see if we move forward with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? Anyone? Paul?
Yeah, just if I may, I know like with soccer and coming up with more plans, I know like last season, for instance, we did all the younger kids, we actually started them off indoors earlier, and they actually went longer because of the rain season. And I think this year we were planning on doing that with the soccer association again, because it's actually a great start for some of those younger kids, because you're in a tighter quarters, you get to meet everyone, and kind of makes it fun. So I'm sure that would be fine. It's even other parks for just practice times, right? I don't know if I'll have to talk to the soccer association. I don't know if practice times is the issue. It could be. I think it's more game timing, and maybe that's something we do. Maybe, I don't know, like if it's more important to have minor soccer because they need more time, maybe we go to the men's association, we go to the women's soccer, we say, are you able to play somewhere else for the year? Because I know even talking with the men's league this year, when we were talking about the upper field, they had said, if it's gone, I mean, for one season, it's no big deal if we need to try and find somewhere else to play. Because there are spaces it might be easier for adult leagues to find and drive to other locations as it is for families. And maybe that can alleviate some of the problems. I think the big key things that I think I should do is I need to meet with the developers to see about timeline and see if there is potential for another season. Because if we can get another season, that would really help us in getting towards a bigger plan. If we have excess revenue that we need to put into reserves, we can put more aside and we can build towards that, as opposed to going ahead now. I don't know. It'll be a lot for council to go over, I think.
Okay. Any other comments on this for Paul? Questions? I think do we want to open it up at this point just for any other comments that we have? General Parks and Recreation comments from the committee? Questions? Keith? Sorry, hang on, we have to unmute you there. Hang on, Keith. There we go.
Okay, this is mainly just for Paul, I guess, and you guys too. But Paul, since the Baseball Association has canceled, are we still maintaining the diamonds?
Yeah, we've actually taken this opportunity to do a lot of extra work that we weren't able to do in the fall with the fall tryouts. So we've cut out that hump that was kind of developing between the inner and outer field, as well as we've got a nice grade to it now, so it rains and there's barely any puddles out there. We've continued on with the capital project of the benches. They're getting new roofs to them now, and the ball diamond is looking great. Soccer fields, we were kind of waiting to see what was going to happen, because we didn't want to start doing huge maintenance to it and spending hours if it was going to all get torn up. I think that'll really just.
So,
no, go ahead.
What about the Granton Diamond? I noticed that there's some adult teams are starting to play on there now. and it hasn't been touched. It looks like weeds, and like I would love to go over and clean it back up, but
Yeah, so we've been trying to open up the diamonds as the work's been done. Like, so instance, Market Street Park and Elm Street Park, we still have the closed signs on them because they have significant growth and a lot of work that needs to be done to them, as well as Granton. I didn't think we'd open that one yet. I know that they may be going out and hitting balls around, but that one's got a significant hump.
yeah, a couple Aldel teams. I don't know who they are, but
Okay, I know. I know I've been approached by some people asking if they can go hit a few balls to each other. That's fine. No, there should be no games being played yet.
no, there's no games.
Okay, and so there's a significant hump that's in the Granton Diamond as well. It's just from the years of the chip and dust just being dragged out, and we want to cut that out as well. So that I think now that we've got these ones done, we're going to go to that one. It's, you know, it's tricky for us right now. We have had no summer students, so our staff's really, you know, they're really doing their part to get grass cutting done because it doesn't stop. But then that leaves me only one or two staff to do projects, major projects, often by themselves. You know, I still have to come out of the office every now and then and help them, well, if I can, because safely and socially distant, of course. But, you know, we're stretched thin right now. And if you don't keep up with the grass, you'll never get on top of it, especially around here. Like one day it'll be not growing, and the next day, like you go back out to Granton and there's 4 inches of growth going on, and it's overnight sometimes in the outfield out there. Like so we're stretched thin with that, but keep with us and we'll get there.
Yeah, no, that was going to be one of my questions. How would your staff? Because, you know, we've done so much work to this diamond, and right now we're almost into 1st of July and it hasn't been touched. And I feel that I want to go over there and do it myself, but because of this thing, I wanted to shut it down. Usually I would go over and pick some weeds out of it and stuff like that, but I just want to know if I was going to get some help. That's all. But
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about your staff. That's all.
No, and we've
I
got
noticed they've cut the grass, but I just thought maybe they could drag it just at least once for me.
we've
So then I
got,
could at
we've
least
got
pick the
some
weeds out.
pretty heavy duty equipment that we're going to be bringing out there. Like, so we've got the diamond groomer, as well as we've got a blade that we are able to scrape a lot of that out because we want to actually pull out the weeds. So we're not just cutting them down. Like, we want to get them right out of there. So we actually have to go in and work it all up. And, you know, I know Dick worked really hard on the arena fields, and they look fantastic. So once he gets out of there, you're going to love it. You're going to love it, Keith.
Perfect. All right, and then just to help the other group, so it kind of sucks that the pavilion's not being rented. Sucks, because most people, if you guys do not know, they rent this pavilion out every weekend, probably Saturday and Sunday. What about picnic tables? Have you looked at some of those picnic tables? I noticed when I moved them for the hockey rink, which never happened, but I don't know if you were gonna fix some of them or just take a look. I know because of everything just kind of got shut down. I'm not just letting you give you the heads up on those picnic tables too.
Yeah, no, it's on our long list of projects we have.
Yeah.
Right now, I know, like around Lucan, we've had to actually take away a bunch of tables because we've had a problem with kids stacking them up and climbing on top of the pavilions. And then we figured, you know, with no rentals going on, those tables don't need to be there. We've chained some of them down, so there's a few tables nicely spread out if people want to go and sit and get some shade. I know in Granton it's the same thing, but it's a little harder in Granton because there's a lot of tables, and it's a lot that we can only fit so much on the trailer safely up Fallon Drive. So
yeah, no, I'm just putting it on your list more than anything.
Sure, add it to the pile.
Yeah.
Right.
My staff right now has a project list about this thick. We've been trying to keep track of all the projects need to get done, what materials are required, who's doing it, and then you get a rain day and it throws everything off. And then vacations on that, so.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Any other questions or comments?
Peter again, in regards to that report from soccer, would the committee be required to make a recommendation for or against or something at this point to council, or how do you generally do that? Any thoughts?
I think I don't know if we're to make a recommendation. I think Paul was just going to make the report to council. Is that what we're going to do, Paul, or
I could maybe go back through the minutes and then just reflect all the comments that were made. Maybe some of them, the longer ones, summarize them, or even just, but we could provide the full minute report to council. But I think that would be the way to do this, because it's not so much a recommendation, but I think they'd want to know how the committee feels as well, because they've also heard from soccer how soccer feels, and I'm sure soccer's going to want to weigh in. I'm going to send all this information out to them. I'm sure they're going to want to weigh in some comments to go on my report to council as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul.
that's all right, Councillor?
That's perfect.
All right. Is that rest of the committee? Is that okay with the rest of the committee? Are we okay with that? Okay. Thank you. Is anything further for this meeting? Questions, comments? Linda, yes.
Can I just ask one question? The consulting fee with Dylan, you said was $10,000. So that's money that's already been spent?
So far, the only one bill's come in, and it's only been $3,000. I'm part of the agreement was also to do tendering and issuing tendering documentation. So I'm assuming that I guess you shouldn't assume, but if the project does not go through and there's no tendering required or tender documents required to be made, it will reduce that cost.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So money's already been spent on this one.
It's unfortunate, but that's just how we have to operate.
The process.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Linda, are you okay? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Colin?
I was just going to say quickly, I always love to point out when people are doing things incorrectly, and generally that attention goes directly to my friend Paul, but I'm sure that I was part of the community that was cursing you when you were closing events early in all of this, but it seems like you were making the right decisions, and I guess I would give you some kudos for that for sure. And also, I know that when you had taken some time to express condolences for the passing of Norm Goldie, who is a long-term employee at the community center and brought the ice resurfacing machine down to the funeral home for a final ride. Maybe you weren't supposed to do that, but I thought you did a great job and you represented our community really well. So I would say thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm sure this hasn't been easy times, and well done.
Thank you. I know. Thank you, Colin, for working with us on being able to do that. I know the family, it was a nice surprise for some of them, and it meant a lot to our employees to be able to be part of that. I know Dick was quite happy he could send Norm off. If you didn't notice, he stood when he drove him down Main Street, which is, Norm never sat down on the machine, so it was perfect.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments before we ask for an adjournment? So I guess we're doing anything else? I guess we're going to look for Paul. Anything?
Oh, I guess some quick housekeeping. I know since I've started this position, we haven't really had a normal year, let's say. We haven't had normal meeting schedules. I know there's been some confusion with terms of members, and even one of our members who was the chair got elected to council. So with that, to do some housekeeping, I know some members are due to either reapply, or we put it out there for more people, as well as we should be electing a new chair. So with that, I'm thinking of proposing to the group. Obviously, this is a decision of council. It would have to go to council because it would change how we operate. But perhaps with talking to some of my peers, they've switched to a single term model, and this can help kind of fix some of the confusion that's out there. Obviously, anyone's allowed to reapply, but that way every year you get a new set of applicants if there are new ones. And that way you're not dealing with the confusion of, say, a sitting member gets elected to council, because it would fall in line with council elections. So if that's appropriate, I think maybe considering COVID-19 and recreation's pretty few and far between right now, that we may not be having a whole bunch of meetings before November, that we just carry on as we are, and then in November, maybe propose new terms to council, and in that it would suggest, you know, new ways of dealing with members and how we post for them to apply for positions and how their terms would operate. And then at that point, I guess, I don't know with the committee, and I think it would have to go to council too, if they're okay with, you know, Daniel Regan, his term has come to an end for the chair. Perhaps if we stay the same till the end, either, I know he wouldn't mind remaining chair, but would everyone feel it's more appropriate that the co-chair then become the chair until November? I think that's something we should discuss, because I know the last few times we've brought up membership changes and chairs, it's been, no one's really kind of raised their hand or had much to offer or nominate. So I don't know if maybe this might be a good way, if it's a yearly thing, you know, if you want to keep going, say there's a project you're really passionate about, you can reapply. There's nothing wrong with that. But then, you know, if you find that this hasn't been beneficial to you, or you just, you know, you're not getting a lot out of the committee, or you find it's too much, it gives you an opportunity to step aside and make way for kind of a fresh perspective. So I put that to the group to discuss, and then we can maybe make a proposal for council.
Comments on that for Paul?
I would keep Dan till November, because I think the rule is that the exiting chair has to buy refreshments for the rest of the committee. So I think that would be good. And if Dan wants to captain the new terms of reference that we could all be part of to set the stage for the next committee in the future of PRAC, that would be my thought process.
I don't believe there's a process or a procedure for that, Councillor. Okay, fair enough. Any other comments? No, not at this time. Okay. No.
As,
all right.
as the co-chair, I will I agree with what Peter is saying, not only for the refreshments, but also for the fact that the co-chair is far too opinionated to take on the chair position on a regular basis.
Okay. Anyone else? No. So we're just okay. All right. So we're just how do we leave that, Paul?
Well, I guess if no one's opposed to the idea, then maybe we could start working together to maybe have another meeting coming up where we start creating a new terms. I think if anything, if no one's opposed, I should at least put a report to council. Right. And if I have support from the members, that's how we will operate till November, even though because council will have to approve it as it does go against the terms of reference.
All right. Okay. Are we all okay? Colin?
Just one quick comment would be perhaps in this group, it might be appropriate if there was like a representative from hockey or a representative from soccer or a representative, and maybe you were trying to avoid that. I don't know, but it just feels that, you know, like I don't really represent anything. I always like to say common sense, but maybe that's not exactly true either. But like it feels like we should have like a liaison of the soccer association part of these conversations.
Right. Thank you, Linda. Sorry, Linda first.
No, sorry. No, I agree with the concept of reestablishing things. Fresh blood is always a good thing, but it isn't always easy to get new members, but on committees. But yeah, no, I think it will. Yeah, it can drag on if we don't set a term and stick with it and let new people step forward. But yeah, representation really, because of the things we talk about, representation from the different sports and things is probably important. I feel like we have that right now, though. I feel like various members, you are involved in all those different sports and so on. I feel like I'm the senior rep, you know, like I'm the exercise lady out there with the old folks. So yeah, and I think having that sort of mix is important because of what recreation involves. and the various age groups and sports and so on. I think it's important that we keep a mixed representation so that it's never swaying one direction or the other, that it's just fair.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Paul, sorry.
Yeah, there's one from Wayne Hall. He must not have audio. He wants to know why we are not the same length as other committees. Now, I'm not sure. I believe this was kind of a trial when it was first set up. I know they had done, one group was going for 1 year, and then another part of the committee was going for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
A balancing term. I believe other committees, I know Daniel and Peter, you sit on other committees, they're 4-year lengths, are they not? To meet with the term of council, is that what they are?
I think with the fire, well, yes, as far as I know,
Maybe I can jump in at this point.
Ron, there's Ron. Yeah.
So most committee appointments are done for the term of council, which is 4 years. Because this was a fairly new committee, I think we wanted to try a little different format. So I think council would be totally open to hearing what everybody in this committee has to say about how they feel the term. 1 year goes by very, very quickly. I don't think I need to tell anybody around the table here that's not surprising. So, if everybody's okay with a 4-year appointment, I think that would be consistent with all the other committee appointments, and it would kind of make sense. And like I said, 4 years go by pretty quick. And it's when you have some big projects like the phase 2, like the soccer fields, 4 years is not a lot of time to get some of those things done. So with that, Mr. Chair and Paul, I think a recommendation to council to change the terms of reference to mirror some of the other committees' appointments would be appropriate.
I guess to follow up on that with another question, I guess for you, Ron, I think then as we're already partway into a term of council, if we want it to meet up with council, then do we put it to council that we re-elect for the remainder of council, and then a new election would be, or not election, I suppose, but application process would start the next council, or would the committee remain the same until the next term of council?
I think that would be open. So if this group wanted to remain on there, you could recommend to council that the current slate of appointees be maintained for the current term of council. And then I think the next election is in October with appointments. Yeah, the new council will start in November of 2022. So you would advertise typically during the same time as the election period's going on for those. So then you'd have a slate of candidates for the new council members to I guess consider for the new appointment for the next term. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if the election is in October, you'd send out a notice advertising for people who are interested in sitting on the PRAC committee. Those notices would go out probably early October, mid-October, to get summarized and then presented to the new council in November or December to start in 2023.
Sorry, I just had a question, a bit more to Colin's point and to Linda's point about representation from other groups in Parks and Rec, baseball, soccer, hockey, those sorts of things. I'm just wondering how that would affect sort of with the membership. Not that there's anything wrong with the membership now, but I'm just wondering how do we, and that's a very good point that they had about drawing in other representation to this.
I think the original intent was to try and get people on the committee who wear more than one hat.
Right.
So, and that's, I think Mark Nixon unfortunately he's not here tonight, but he kind of wears the minor soccer hat.
Right.
Keith, you've got ball. Todd, you probably got hockey. So there's different people around the table that wear those hats. And we tried to get some people who wear more than one hat. Correct. Ultimately, it would be up to council. So anybody who applies, I would hope, would give their background as to what they're involved in, what their where their interests lie.
Paul, you had mentioned earlier that you did, well, not tonight, but previous to the meeting, that you had looked at other sample terms of references from other groups. And maybe that's how we started the process with a draft that we can banter around a bit and look at how we work with that. If we do get into it 6 months from now and we've got a big infrastructure project coming or something, maybe you look at, yes, we represent each group through Parks and Rec, but maybe we need an engineer from the community there, or a planning representative that's not somebody that can help guide us in with experience in those specific areas. It depends how you want to form the committee, but I know you mentioned there's a few different terms of references out there, so maybe we can have a look at them and see what might fit and to align with the other terms of reference, as Ron said, for timing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really came out in conversation is the fact that as people have stepped into roles, they've joined committees, or they've stepped into a role on the committee as a staff member. Sometimes they've had to adjust, not adjust, but they've made suggestions to the terms of reference on how they work professionally. And I think that's really how it's been. I know, like, some communities they abolish committees because they find it's just too difficult to get anything done. Others find it's a very useful tool. So I think there's a lot to look at. I think, in that terms, especially, like, say you have a capital project you need better advice on, we can always invite in guests. It is a public meeting, so we can always invite in guests. Like, if anyone has suggestions, like, we're having this project and really none of us, like, we don't really know what to comment on this, but we've heard from these residents, or we've heard from people in the community, or so this person has expertise and they really want to come present it to us. By all means, send me an invitation. I will happily bring it to the committee.
Okay, great. Are there any other further comments, questions that we'd like to bring forward? So none, we're good. I guess what we'll do is we will motion for an adjournment. So I have somebody that would motion. So Colin, seconded by Todd. Anybody opposed? We are adjourned at 8, I think it's 8:11. We're good. Thank you, everybody, for joining. All right.